Hey guys, I'm Lucy Walker and today I want to show you how to use a disc cutter. And I also want to talk a little bit about what you should be looking for if you're thinking to buy one of these for yourself. Now, the one I have right here is from Durston in the UK, which basically means it's built like a brick shithouse. So let's take a look at what we have. Now, disc cutters themselves come with two main parts. So the first part is the actual disc cutter itself right here, and the second are the punches right here. If you're looking at buying one of these bad boys, my main recommendation is don't get tempted by the cheapy ones, okay? Especially those that don't have a little nut to tighten it on the top. Seriously, the cheap disc cutters, I had one, it is in the trash now. Literally, you'd be better off cutting it out by hand by the time you finish farting around, okay? So don't be tempted by those. And so thankfully mine right here has this little tightening mechanism. And that's the main feature that you really want to make sure that you have. Another thing to check is that the inside of the holes here are super smooth. You don't want to see any ridges or anything in there. You really want it to be nice and smooth. If it's not perfectly smooth, surprise, surprise, you're not going to get perfectly smooth cuts. The second part of the kit are the punches themselves. And each punch has a corresponding hole in the disc cutter. So you want to make sure that you're always using the right size punch for the right size hole, okay? Any hole is definitely not a goal here, okay? So let's take a look at the punches themselves. And the first thing we need to make sure with these is that we have a really nice tight fit and it just goes in super smoothly here. The second thing that we need to take a look at are the sides of the punches themselves. And just like with the disc cutter, we want the sides of our punches to be super smooth. And finally, the last thing that we want to take a look at is the actual cutting edge here. And this needs to be sharp, kind of obvious, right? But we want it to be at a slight angle. And that way, when it cuts, we get a really nice flat finish to our discs there. So, how to use these things? Well, the first thing you want is a really nice solid work surface. Secondly, you're going to need a little rubber mat to put under your disc cutter. And this bad boy here, it came with the kit from Durston. It looks pretty cool, but to be honest, any piece of 2 to 3 millimeter thick rubber is going to work a treat. It's basically just to absorb vibrations from when we beat the crap out of it in a little while. So I'm going to be using a piece of 20 gauge sterling silver here. And these things, they can pretty much cut up to 18 gauge, no drama at all, if you're using them with a mallet. If you're going to get any thicker than that though, you'll probably want to go to a hydraulic press if you have one. You'll probably just about manage to get through 16 gauge, but it's going to be a bit of a workout. So I've also got a piece of copper here, and that is going to go into the opposite side. So let's go for this 13 millimeter hole right here. And all I'm going to do is just open the little nut at the top here and slide my silver right in there. Then directly on the opposite side, I'm going to put a small shim of copper. And this is exactly the same gauge as my sterling silver here, which is 20 gauge. So I'm just going to pop that in directly opposite and tighten it up. Okay, so I hear a question. Why are we putting copper in the opposite side? Well, that's basically just to balance things out. And all it means is that we're going to keep our disc cutter working happily for a lot longer. So once we've got everything in there, we're just going to make sure it's nice and tight. Now, if you don't have good finger strength, there is an Allen key that comes with that, but I find just tightening it by hand works a treat. Now, we're going to find the right punch. We've got a 13 millimeter hole, so we want a 13 millimeter punch, which I think is this one right here. So there we go, fits in there perfectly. But before that goes in, we need to add a little bit of lubrication. So I'm going to grab, this is just Durston lubrication that comes with the kit, but you can use Burlife or even WD-40, works an absolute treat. I'm going to add a little bit of lubrication to the end there and just pop it right in the hole there. Now, just an FYI, cutting side down, please, okay? The cutting side, surprisingly enough, it is the sharp edge. This edge, that is going to do bugger all except trash your tools, okay? So do make sure you've got the cutting side down. There we go, easy peasy. Next part, we are going to use a hammer. Actually, that's a lie. It is not a hammer, it's a mallet. And this is a dead blow mallet, so it's got a lot of shot in there and it packs a massive punch. You don't want to be using a regular hammer on here, but a delving hammer or a brass hammer will all work perfectly. All that's left to do now, smack it. But when we're going to hit this, what I want you to make sure is that you're hitting it straight on with your hammer. We don't want our hammer leaning from one side to the other. So here we go. Health and safety alert, keep your bloody fingers out of the way, okay? And it goes. Done. And that really is all there is to using a disc cutter. Now, one thing that you might find happens is occasionally you kind of got your punch in there, you've hit it a few times, but your punch is stuck halfway and your little silver disc is stuck up in there too. No biggie at all. If that happens, all it means is you just need to hit it once, maybe twice more with the hammer, and it will pop right through the back. Now, one more little tip on using the disc cutter. If you're like me and you like using your rolling mill to create textures, you always want to put the texture on first and then cut out your disc afterwards. Because if we roll a disc, we don't end up with a nice circle after it, we end up with more of an oval shape. But if we're going to cut this in the disc cutter, we've got a couple of things that we need to think about. So let's just take this out, unscrew the top here, and I've got our copper ready. And this texture, it's from a plate from Roberta at Oregon Trail Silver. So do check those out if you get a chance, they are fantastic. So what I'm going to do is just pop this into the disc cutter. But it's really important to put it pattern side down, okay? And that way we don't end up with any extra patterns on there that we don't want. So I'm going to pop this back in. We'll do a 16mm one this time, just to mix things up a bit. Tighten it up again, and then we'll grab our 16mm punch, pop it in there. Oops, forgot to lubricate. Add a little bit of lubrication. Once it's in, you know the game, okay? We're just going to grab the mallet, make sure it's lined up on there, fingers out of the bloody way. And there we go. No drama at all. Alrighty guys, thank you very much for joining me. If you want to see what we're going to do with this silver disc a little later on, don't forget to hit subscribe. Alrighty guys, catch you later.